Conan the Barbarian is a 1982 film starring Arnold Schwarzenegger as Conan the Barbarian, Sandal Bergman as Valeria, the Queen of Thieves, and James Earl Jones as Thulsa Doom, the villain. It was directed by John Milius, who was the writer for the first two Dirty Harry films. He received an Academy Award nomination for his work as screenwriter on Apocalypse Now, and then went on to write and direct Conan the Barbarian and the Red Dawn, among others. And it was, little known fact, written by Oliver Stone, who later went on to fame and fortune writing and directing such films as JFK, Platoon, Snowden, Natural Born Killers, Any Given Sunday, etc. This was actually Arnold Schwarzenegger's first commercially successful film. Made $100 million. You can definitely see that he's kind of rough around the edges in here, but I think that's part of this movie's charm. It's been I have a lot of affection for this film because my cousins and I grew up kind of like, we were 8 to 10-year-old boys when Conan and the Barbarian and the Destroyer came out. It's very quotable. It's got a lot of action and scantily clad females. Jim, like I said, it's been a minute since I've seen this film. I don't know how many times you've seen it and how long it's been for you, but kind of like, what'd you think? How did it hold up? Thoughts?
I can't actually remember how many times I've seen this movie because I know, we watched it together as roommates, but or at least I think we did. That might have been The Destroyer.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but I know I have seen it before.
Uh-huh.
But it's been so long at this point that I remembered basically nothing about it.
Right.
And I just knew, it's this early Arnold Schwarzenegger fantasy, sword and sandals film that I remember sort of thinking fondly of, but probably because it's really shitty and cheesy.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is the epitome of the 1980s sword and sandal movie, man. This is it. This is the of that movie. And
I mean, this spawns, Xena and Hercules and Beastmaster. Like, this is the granddaddy of them all. And I don't mean that in terms of like timeline.
Right.
There's stuff before this, but this is the one that kind of defined the genre.
Yeah, and in large part because of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like I said, he's kind of a diamond in the rough. The fact that he is struggling with his dialogue really kind of fits the fact that this is a story about a kid that's essentially raised by wolves, except for the wolves were cruel slave race people. Mm-hmm. And kind of his his weird, harsh German accent kind of fits his character, and the fact that he's a little maybe guileless and there's this really interesting thing where him and this other thief character have a conversation about the religions, which is like reminded me of like 2 7-year-old boys talking about whose dad can beat them up in a playground situation.
Yeah, this is exactly what I have in my notes. It's 5-year-olds like making up superpowers for their action figures, right?
Yeah, well, I have a force field, and
Right.
and it's got an anti-force field for your force field.
Uh-huh.
It's sweet and endearing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's funny because when I was watching this film, I'm like, man, the 3 individual acts here, I think, are pretty good. But I felt like that the transitions between them were a little clunky. When I watched this without actually having the pressure of doing a live watch and making jokes about it, I thought that some of the transitions were smoother, like that scene where he's dicking down the witch, and just ridiculous, and we were having fun watching it. Like, that's the connection of how he ends up in the Snake City and how he meets the Queen of Thieves, and she's the Queen of Thieves, so of course she'd be stealing gems, and it does flow a little bit better. I do think there's some weirdness going on from the second to third act, but it's like I said, of the film of this type, it's pretty fucking good. It's got some really good set pieces, and in the center of it is Arnold Schwarzenegger, this rough around the edges, barely speak 5 sentences that you give him, and it works, and it's the movie that made him a star. Like,
yeah, for sure.
I mean, think about if this movie had flopped and you don't get the Terminator, you don't get the Predator, you don't get what are the other ones? Have I already said the Terminator? Yeah, I did.
You don't get Terminator,
you don't get
Predator,
Commando,
or the other Terminator.
It's amazing. It's amazing, like how Hollywood would be different, how the state of California would be different if Arnold had bombed in this film, and he didn't, and he worked his ass off for it.
Yeah, no, I so this is a prime example of why we don't do live watches for stuff that we cover because
Right, that's actually important.
yeah, during the live watch, I didn't understand anything about this movie.
Yeah.
I was looking at the funny characters, I was cracking the jokes,
Yeah.
and I came away from it knowing absolutely nothing about the plot or the themes or anything. Second watch, which I did in the same day because our schedule's tight, I came away from this movie with an entirely new respect for it. I think it's shockingly deep thematically. Like
I'm curious to
existential
hear about this,
philosophy
yes.
and like dude, it's crazy. If like I'll try and do my best to explain it, and I
Hey,
am definitely not a philosophy student.
My high school yearbook had a Nietzsche quote in it too. It did not make it deep and thematic. I'm curious to hear your.
That's not the most. That's not the deepest part of it. We'll say.
I mean, I'll add that praise to like because I'm not sure I'm with you on that level. I'm looking forward to the discussion. I'm open to it. But this film looks fucking amazing. All these shots on location in
feels
Spain.
epic.
It's like one of the last films that have like that cast of thousands field where when you see this giant, what do they call those like weird pyramids, ziggurats, like with
the mountain of power
standing there, and there's like 1,000 people worshiping him. There's an actual 1,000 people there worshiping him.
This movie is epic on every level.
Yes.
From the number of extras on set, like you said, to what I think is actually a score that almost becomes epic enough to really sell it. I think it mostly gets there.
It walks between that and self-parody.
Occasionally, yeah. And I think it's like reaching for something that it is with almost within its grasp. And
I think they used the score poorly because that heroic barbarian anthem also plays over to Massacre of His People and Family, which I think if they would have done a little bit more Howard Shore there and then save the Teutonic triumph for the second act transition and stuff, like you would have had something, because it is a badass, like iconic, like gets you moving choral, intense choral Duel of the Fates kind of stuff too.
I mean, I when I was listening to it in my second watch, I was thinking, man, this is about as close as I've heard to a fantasy epic John Williams. Like it's damn near there. So that's another scale in which it's epic. The set pieces are big. Like you look at that ziggurat, Mountain of Power thing that you're talking about. It's a pretty damn big set.
Yeah.
Like those steps are no joke.
Yeah. Some of the animatronics were really sophisticated. Like
the snakes.
The snake, like I thought, especially the really big ones, they move pretty well. There's a couple of it's a 1982 film, but the fucking buzzard that Arnold tears into, that's startlingly lifelike, I thought.
Yeah, no, it's the movie has its charms, and some of them are the cheese, right? Like punching out a camel is there for comedy.
Sure.
There's weird animal stuff happening throughout this entire movie, like dogs in armor, punching out that camel, and then the buzzard bite. The funniest thing about that to me is that it 100% works. Like he's on the Tree of Woe. He bites the neck out of this buzzard.
Right.
There are other
dares
buzzards
to try to eat him before he's good and dead.
There are other buzzards in the tree, and none of them fuck with him again. Not a single one comes down and tries to take a bite.
Yeah, like you can tell they're landing and like, hey, why aren't we eating this guy? So do you see? Did you see the guy that's missing his neck down there? That's why we're not eating this fucker.
It's because Bobby tried it and Bobby got bit.
We're giving it 3 days till he last moves, and then we're gonna move. But
it's great. It's weird
great.
animal stuff though around it, like the weird, James Earl Jones turning into a snake, which I actually don't think goes anywhere, which is odd.
Yeah.
Just a lot of strange stuff like that.
I think it's interesting too because as a kid, now I had a atypical childhood, and I was raised in a religious cult where like demonic activity was not something that was seen as a metaphor for some other struggle. It's like an actual thing that can happen to you, and I found some of these scenes terrifying. Like I can't remember, as a child, I don't know that I ever made it through the demons trying to take Conan because they brought him back to life scene without running for the other room, because it's just like, I think Conan sitting there dead with all the weird spells tattooed on his body is fucking creepy, and burial shroud. The actual demons coming are kind of silly to look at now, but like, you know,
Are they? Like, I was looking at it thinking, man, that is, what if that happened in real life and it looked exactly like it did?
yeah,
That'd be fucking creepy.
right. And there's also the desperation, the heroism of his sweetheart Valeria, and his stalwart companions. Like, I that stuff really is kind of Jungian, and that like you this could almost work as a silent film. Everything is so well visualized and archetypal. Like, you can tell the guys that are bad just by the looking at them. You know, oh, this dude with the magnet for his helmet and the twin snake motif, and it's all jet black armor. Bad news. Super bad news. It gets complicated after that because everyone else is kind of barbarians, and they could go, basically, you got to judge by how many skulls they got on them. Like, 1 or 2 skulls, yeah, okay, that's but like, if they got 6 skulls, or maybe there's a baby skull, like, that's probably a bad dude.
Yeah, if you haven't learned not to take skulls by the second skull,
Right.
you're probably never going to learn
You
it.
get too many skulls, and you just probably can't be a good person.
And there's a lot of, comedy in this film too,
Yes.
which I think borderline is too much sometimes. But it's also one of its charms. One of the reasons I love it.
Yeah, I think they go over that line in The Destroyer, but they still have some pretty funny stuff. Like I said, the debate about, who's got the, is it Four Winds or Crom is comedy, but it works. Him punching a camel out is objectively hilarious.
I think he gets hit on by a priest at some point.
That's pretty funny.
That was kind of funny.
Right.
And the way he reacts to that, oh, these are your priest robes, and
especially since it's also like, because the other thing is, like, as I'm watching this 1982 film of Barbarians, but I'm also a 2019 man, and I'm aware of all the social progress, and I'm like, the scene of him seducing the priest is remarkably free of homophobia for what it is in 1982.
I think so. Like, he's got a goal, the other guy has a goal, and Arnold wins. Like,
there's no like savagery to it. It's just like, if this guy had been I could bribe him with money, I'd bribe him with money. If I could have bribed him with a camel, I'd bribe him with a camel.
Right.
He likes my ass, I'm gonna bribe him with the ass.
There you go.
And like, even like when he gets him alone, it's like, he kind of lets him down easy. Like, I'm just I'm so nervous and afraid. It's my before he knocks the guy out and takes his clothes. Pretty progressive for 1980s bodybuilder.
Except maybe in the depiction of the Mongols.
There's Mongols in this film?
Yeah, I mean, when he goes to the east and everybody starts turning Asian, that you see on screen.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the guy on the beach. I think there's
Are they
a
actually
little bit of a
stereotyped. Because this is an era.
It's tough to tell. It's
like 3 years
for
later,
sure.
they'll dress up a white man to be an Indian in Short Circuit. Like, these are actually authentically Polynesian and Asian actors. The one guy's like the thief rogue warrior is a world champion surfer. Did you know this?
No, I didn't.
He'd never acted before. He's like called King of the Pipeline, or the pipe, or the tunnel or funnel, or whatever the fuck they do when they're hanging loose. But he looked good surfing.
Wow.
And I think had done like was in a documentary that Milius had either produced or whatever. And he's like, I want you to be my fucking ranger, and I want this bodybuilder that's never had an English speaking line in a film to be my barbarian. And I want this dancer lady with massive thighs to be my warrior queen. Like, it's, shit, why not? And he literally taught them on set. There was a story where the reason they put, like, he wanted James Earl Jones and, like, Max von Sydow, who are actors who are way, like, you know.
Dude, James Earl Jones, so good in this.
And he's, okay, we'll talk about that here in a minute.
He's so good.
But these guys had award-winning stage and screen careers, and he brought them in to kind of inspire these newbies to, like, look, sit up straight and take yourself fucking seriously. Max von Sydow, Sido, whatever, is on set, and I guess it worked. Supposedly Arnold's first scene that he filmed was the speech where he's like, "What is good?" and he does that, to crush your enemies and to see them dry. That apparently that's his first line, and it was so bad. Even the best take that Milius just gave him like 6 weeks off to work on the next lines. and he personally practiced the lines with Arnold like 40, 50 times to get the pronunciation just right.
Wow.
I mean, because that's the thing. Like Arnold worked. The other thing that I found surprising is so like there's something about how John Milius wanted him to look more athletic, so he trained for 18 months. But it's not like Christian Bale beefing up to play Batman. Schwarzenegger beefed down to play Conan. He lost
because he couldn't move.
He lost like 30 pounds, so
well
he could
enough?
do like some of the fluidity and grace and rope climbing and shit that
Holy
he
shit.
could do. But yeah, like what fucking role will like? And I imagine that's got to be tough for a bodybuilder to lose that much lean muscle mass.
Yeah.
Especially,
I mean, he wasn't at that time. I don't think. I don't actually know when he won Mr. Universe and wrote all his books and stuff.
Right.
But like, he went on to define bodybuilder
right.
to the population at large.
Yeah.
Like, when you think the most famous bodybuilder, you think Arnold Schwarzenegger. Period.
He's still like, there's people that are bigger, but like many people today say like, if you want like the epitome of definition without like grotesquerie or distortion, like a perfectly proportioned, as massive you can be and maintained proportions of a normal human being, it's Arnold. And
he seemingly did it pretty naturally from what I gather from, his books like Pumping Iron.
Pretty naturally.
Yeah. Preternaturally. I don't know.
Yeah. Like he doesn't have the back. I mean, he's got to be juicing. Like he's just like, keeping his testicle size and head size insane,
Yeah.
He's avoiding
balancing
the back knee.
desperately balancing it.
Yeah.
As he's making his shake in the morning.
Yeah. As he's sucking wolf urine down. And creatine powder. What?
Speaking of wolf urine.
Yeah. Okay.
And being raised by wolves, as the saying goes. This is very much a coming of age story, right?
Sure.
I mean, you see in the beginning that his father is telling him, about the riddle of steel, which we'll get into. And he thinks like steel is the important thing here. But his father is killed, even though he's got this amazing sword. He's murdered. Both him and Conan's mother are murdered, and that leaves Conan kind of in a weird way, like after spending X amount of years. I want to say something like 1,000 years, but maybe we'll get there as well. On this wheel of pain, he's kind of still a child in a man's body, right?
Oh,
like
certainly.
a super ripped, insanely strong man's body. But he has a lot to learn, and I think that's kind of like plot device is the wrong term, but the crutch that they use to get him to a place where he can be this badass warrior,
right?
But also still be sort of emotionally stunted.
Yeah.
And I think that leads into kind of one of the most interesting themes.
Well, also it helps soften the blow of him committing like various war crimes. Like there's the the other thing is like they feed it's like God. There's a scene where they give him a woman to breed with.
Oh, right.
And it's like I'm like, oh
yeah, they're breeding him. It's a it's a weird thing.
Like he's a prize stallion and like and I'm like, because that's the other thing is realistically, if you're breeding a gladiator barbarian, I think the woman would look a lot more trollish. Like you'd have this like you'd find a 6'4" sturdily built beast of a woman to breed to this man, but they bring her in this like this.
Yeah, it's like Tormund and Brienne getting together, right? That's what you want.
That's some sons and daughters that you can put in the pit and earn some handsome profit. They bring in this waifish thing draped in silks and whatnot. But like they also, it's like, cause he's childlike and he's also not really cruel. Like they have to make it seem like it's like, well, they're throwing this girl in this cage, but Conan's going to seduce her or give her a blank. I don't know. It's so fucking bizarre to try to watch them thread this needle between, are we really going to have this hero rape a woman?
Yeah, it's this weird, like, sort of milder Khal Drogo kind of thing, right? Like, it's accelerated and it's faster. And, the expectation is that he is going to be a brute in the in the sheets,
right?
But he seems to like calm down. I'm sure he's a proficient lovemaker,
and certainly. If you're listening, Arnold, and he also, they give him a fairly well sketched relationship with a woman later on. Which that's the thing. I guess that's where maybe you're going with the surprising depth that this film's got. when you think about
That's one of the things, yeah.
the other swords and sandals epics of the day, the knockoffs, and how just kind of just top to bottom terrible they are. I mean, this is written by an Academy Award winning writer, and it's directed by an Academy Award winning writer. They know how to fucking tell a story. So
they do, yeah. And I'm super interested in this Riddle of Steel because first time I watched it, I had no fucking idea what the Riddle of Steel was. And I assumed that halfway through the movie, he learned the answer to the Riddle of the Steel when he became a master warrior. You know, he was trained in the pits, and then he went east and he learned the arts there, and he became this amazing warrior. But on second watch, I understood that is Act 1 of his progress toward understanding the Riddle of Steel. And that Act 2 is what James Earl Jones, what Thulsa Doom is professing here, which is flesh. So you've got steel, which Arnold has mastered. Conan has mastered.
It's something you can trust. It's something strong. It's something you can,
Unfortunately, that is nothing in the face of the flesh, right? Because you see how ineffective it is. He can't just walk in and kill Thulsa Doom because he has all these acolytes, because these people are willing to die for him.
And the steel is nothing without the flesh to wield it. Like it literally,
absolutely, yeah.
That's kind of foreshadowed when Conan comes across the dead warrior king's tomb. Like this sword did not save that guy. And it can do nothing. Like now, like his, I think when the old king starts to stir, you're supposed to understand that like this sword is powerless from keeping its owner protected now because it has no will intention of its own. So I agree. Thulsa Doom is what eventually gives you the answer to the Riddle of Steel.
But I think it's only the second piece of the puzzle. I think there's a third piece which Conan learns in the third act. And that is that will is the sort of unifying. It's like a Triforce sort of thing where will is the thing that brings the flesh and the steel together. Yeah. And all of those things combined are the answer to the Riddle of Steel. Because ultimately, in the face of, Arnold Schwarzenegger, of Conan, when they're up on that final platform at the Mountain of Power, and James Earl Jones turns to Arnold and says, "You're my son. What would you be if I hadn't done the things I did?
Right.
I made you. Sure. You'll be nothing when I'm gone." And it's simply the will that he has to see through the manipulation there.
Yeah.
That wins the day. And I think like he has to have both. He has to have all of those things to even get where he is. He has to have sort of command of the flesh. Like he works with the people in his group to defeat Thulsa Doom's army that comes out to kill him and take back, Oric's daughter. And I think there's a lot of interesting like existential stuff around that conversation, but we'll probably get there in a minute.
I think you're right, and I like the fact that because flesh without steel is weak. Steel without flesh is useless, and both of those without will is directionless. Like, they're showing a difference between the other barbarians that are working for Thulsa Doom, and like they're doing things for power, and whereas what Conan is motivated by essentially freedom and love, and that is what makes him a good guy. Like if he hadn't learned those things and Thulsa gives him this opportunity to join him and become more powerful, then why not take that? Like that's what separates an evil man from a good man. And the Conan, classic anti-hero, but he's more good than bad.
For sure. And I think it's interesting too when you look at the cult that Thulsa Doom is building, because it seems like their goal is to become empty, which is sort of, it's bizarre because when you're first introduced to them, right, they're like hippies. And you see them just like, living this free and loving life with all of their friends. And then this cult comes in. And by the time we get to the end of this movie, those same people are ready to cleanse the earth of liars and rule makers and essentially every authority that would be competing with Thulsa Doom.
Yeah, I mean,
like they've been brainwashed. They're empty. They're not following an ideology. They're following a man. They have no will of their own.
Right. It's like the age of adventure Jonestown, led by James Earl Jones.
Right.
And so I thought there was also kind of that, because I think people used to be more afraid of cults than they were, because there was a few like the Moonies and of course I think the kind of climax in our day with like the Heaven's Gate
Oh, right.
cult, where you had these people that like there's still cults around today. I used to be a member of one. It's just Scientologists. There's others, but I think there's kind of that, like, because these flower children were clearly kind of supposed to suggest that these people that are like easily manipulated and maybe not think about maybe they don't think about their life's philosophy from many first principles. And how easy it is to kind of twist that ideology into, you go from flowers, children, and loving life to cannibalistic orgies to becoming a death squad cult. And I thought that was an interesting facet. You said something about James Earl Jones being fantastic in this. And
Yeah.
I agree, but only so much as that any other man in this role is fucking ridiculous.
Oh, I agree completely.
Because as I was researching this and I saw Thulsa Doom as like this classic, that this is kind of the Riddler for Conan, like this, or the Joker, like he's like a classic foil, this powerful necromancer, and he's described as having this like bleach white skull for a face, and I'm thinking, James Earl Jones, head shaved with like a skull painted on his face, and everything else exactly the same. Because I dug his armor, his robes, all that shit. Mm-hmm. You shave that man's head and put him in like white face paint, so his face looks like a skull, and he becomes just as riveting and magnetic and actually terrifying.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple things where, like, when he's he's like mesmerizing Conan's mother, and he's doing this kind of like kind of the god Ra from Stargate, where he's pulling this kind of like model, I don't know, like something like Prince would pull off in a music video, and it's like, man, dude, you are just on the edge of losing this whole thing, maybe kind of doing it.
No, he wrestles this role to the ground and dominates it. Like he commits 100% to this role.
Yes,
and that is the thing that makes it work.
Right.
I think the character, the dialogue does him no favors, I think.
Right.
Yet somehow he's able to bring a gravitas, and that's just James Earl Jones. Like, nothing comes out of that man's mouth that I don't believe. Like,
yeah.
So, yeah, I agree. Anybody else in this role, I have a much harder time seeing it. You could probably have made him look less silly, along with his. Let me ask you this.
Well, no, I want to stay because it's the wig. Honestly,
that's a huge problem.
Like, this movie is one wig and a bad henchman mustache.
Yes,
away from being timeless. But because of those things, and honestly, Valeria's hair, this is forever going to be like a late 70s, early 80s production. And god damn it, that's one thing that movies don't do nowadays. Movies are much better at intentionally thinking about making a like stuff like this, these period pieces that are not actually from a real period, making them appear more timeless and of an era that didn't exist. Whereas this, it's like everything else looks so amazing. The swords are amazing, the armor's amazing, the sets are amazing, but the hair and makeup people were allowed to just be like, glam these fuckers up, sure, why not? Yeah, this is what a Cimmerian looks like. This is how his hair is feathered. Like, it's a damn shame. It's a damn shame they couldn't get the hair and makeup. Like, look at what this guy's wearing. It's like a beaver pelt with fangs. And you're gonna tease his bangs? What the hell? Anyway, what you were saying?
No, it's fucked up. I want to move to some discussion about how much time elapses in this movie.
Yeah.
So Thulsa Doom, they say it in the movie, is 1,000 years old.
Suspiciously round number to my skeptical mind.
It's probably like 997 or something.
Anywhere between.
He rounds up. Sounds better.
Anywhere, but if he's 90 years old in this day, no one else would be alive around to contradict him.
Right.
So maybe he's just like a really well preserved 90.
Okay.
And he's just used that to build his legend. But go on. Yes.
I would fully believe that he is not actually 1,000 years old. However, the movie sets that up.
Sure.
And says this man's 1,000 years old. Now, if I come to you and I say, when I was younger, I had a Chevy Corsica.
Okay.
That's maybe too specific. When I was younger, I enjoyed boating.
Okay.
How old do you think I was when I enjoyed boating? As a 37-year-old man.
I mean, when someone says they enjoyed, I always think that's like at least a different era in their life. So like that'd be in your 20s, like college age.
Okay, so like
or
a
maybe
third,
even before.
a third of my life.
Yeah. Okay.
Back.
Yeah.
Now let's extrapolate and say that Thulsa Doom, when he tells Arnold Schwarzenegger, I don't remember killing your parents. That happened when I was a younger man in a different era of my life.
Oh shit, you're right.
He's got to be like 700 years old at that point, right?
Yeah.
So that would make Conan 300 at least. That would make his followers, his two henchmen, at least 300, probably more like 4.
What if he's just full of shit?
No.
Okay.
You're ruining my whole thing.
All right.
I think this is a coming of age story of a 1,000-year-old boy.
Because
is what I'm hypothesizing here, or at least a 300-year-old boy.
I will grant it makes no sense for a 1,000-year-old man to say anything in the last decade as from my youth.
Right. Or when I was younger. Yeah.
Right. That's like Yoda referring to his Attack of the Clones
930s.
days as his like I was a younger man and now 900 years old, not as good. Like no, dude, like you're 870, you're as old and wrinkly ass as you're going to get when you're 900.
Right.
Like come on.
Nothing has perceivably changed in the last 50 years for you.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm thinking everybody in this is at least several hundred years old. At least the main players like Conan, Thulsa, and his 2 sidekicks.
Okay. I don't think that's literally true, but sure. Like you can make an argument for that. Yeah.
Okay.
I think because the other thing is like it doesn't make sense for a man in Thulsa's position to make like at this point Conan has no hand, like there's no incentive for Thulsa to try to minimize his actions. Like
what do you mean?
when you drag Judge Kavanaugh before the Congress and he's asked to defend his boofing and his spring break drinking and all that, he's like, oh, I'm a young man who didn't drink. You don't. He doesn't do that if he's literally like holding those Congress people over a pit of molten lava. He's not making excuses for his behavior. So it's like that's a weird conundrum because why would he be like, oh, of course I did shit like kill mothers 10 years ago when I was 800. I get your point.
Right.
I think it's a script fuck up, but
probably yeah. Or he's a straight up liar. I think that's the better.
It could be the cult
explanation.
Because the way I retcon when I started reading this guy's badass history, I'm like, this is his first death. This is when he becomes a necromancer. So I kind of fully bought that this was early on in his career, but yeah, I guess I missed the whole. But then
they do nothing to try to make him look older between the time that Arnold Schwarzenegger was a kid, the time that Conan was a kid, and now.
Yeah.
Whereas they do like that final shot, which is fucking metal.
Yes.
Of Conan in the smoke and the red lights as old Conan.
Yeah, sitting on a throne with his
Conan,
the heavy crown sitting upon his troubled brow.
Right. So they do go to effort there to make him look a little bit older. Why wouldn't they do that with James Earl Jones if he was aging at a normal rate? Like I have to think that there's some truth to the idea that he's 1,000 years old, or at least like
the man could turn into a snake. What do you want?
Right. I mean, what other evidence do you need
Black
that he could
crack,
be super old?
Snake don't flake. You put those together, and you have an infinitely youthful or mid 40s and 50s looking black man.
How much of his life do you think he spent as a snake versus a humanoid?
Well, that's my question. When do you become a snake if you have that power? Mm-hmm. Like, it's like like if you're about to eat a virginal offering, sure.
Yeah.
If you're getting freaky with your captured princess in the bedchambers, maybe.
I think you just ask.
What
do you want?
You see a hulking barbarian sneaking into your sex pit, and you're like, I'm going to exit stage left. Okay. But like, other than that, is that something you just like, you know what? I'm going to spend this month as a snake just to kind of get my mind right. I gotta coil up here in a corner, get my mind right.
I think so.
I think
if you could
crawl in this here wicker basket, just kind of think like a snake for a bit.
Listen to this flute soundtrack. I think if you could switch states between, like, easily move between those two worlds, you do it pretty often. To just, like you said, get your mind right. I don't think I'm quite done with the existential philosophy because there's a big question raised for Conan at the end of this movie.
Okay.
And I kind of sort of introduced the scene already. It's that final scene where I love it. Like it's so there's such a matter of fact way about how he chops off Dulce Doom's head, and he takes it and he shows how hollow this man is, how nothing this flesh is when he shows it. He fucking shows it to the crowd of followers.
Right.
And then he throws it down the steps, which is amazing. Absolutely amazing. But I think the important thing there is the question that James Earl Jones, that Thulsa raises in Conan's head.
I am the wellspring from which you flow. When I am gone, you will have never been. What will your world be without me? My son.
Essentially, what will you be when you get everything you want? When you get everything that has been driving you so far, who will you become?
Right. Will you
and
become
I think
me?
that's what Conan is pondering as he sits on the steps at the end of this film. He's like trying to decide, I've gotten it. I've done it.
Yeah,
I've
done it
avenged
all.
my father.
Right.
I've answered the riddle of steel. I understand it.
I've become a
I'm
king
going to
by
get
my
into
own hand.
Valhalla
Yeah.
most likely when I die. What am I now? And that, to me, is like one of the deeper questions in this film. Does he actually find Crom's sword?
I don't think that's supposed to be the sword of Crom.
Okay, because he finds a sword and he picks it up and he says Crom.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to. He's realizing that this is like potentially a blessing of Crom. You
Okay.
know, like this is like Providence guiding him. I don't know where he was. His dad's a blacksmith. He has to know that banging a sword on a rusty sword on the ground is not going to make it pristine and maintain its edge in any way. But that's what happens.
No, he's ruined that sword.
I love it how he's like chased up this rock by this pack of hounds. He falls backwards, tumbles in, finds the sword.
All the time going,
My God, the Arnold pain screaming is 10 out of 10.
It's prime,
11 out of
yeah.
10 on this, and you get it right. Front loaded with a lot of, it's grunt loaded and front loaded with a lot of screams and pain of Arnold Schwarzenegger. But he rolls down his thing, he gets the sword, he comes back up with like a devilish smile on his face, and the next scene he's decked out head to toe in dog skin.
the implication
It's
there.
such a great detail that he fucking chased down and slaughtered every one of these fuckers and is wearing them. He's eaten and wearing them triumphantly. I love it.
No, it's great. This movie pulls zero punches. I talked about, throwing Thulsa's head down the stairs.
Yeah.
He punches out camels.
Yeah.
The kills that are violent and bloody.
Yes.
I heard that this got an X rating and they had to pull out some
I imagine
footage.
so. Between like the sexual violence, the actual violence, the just bare chested nudity,
Yeah.
the uncanny, like the because this is also came out in the middle of the D&D hysteria. So like I'm sure all that combined had the MPAA.
I mean, it starts off with a horrific scene. Like,
Yeah.
Conan's father is mauled to death by dogs. His
That,
own
which is
sword,
hardcore. Like Game of Thrones didn't have the
Yeah.
balls to show someone ripped apart by dogs. This movie does.
by armored dogs too, which is
That
hilarious.
scene where young Conan is holding his mother's hand, and you see like the shadow of the sword pass over the scene, and her head tumble, and her body go limp, and pull her.
Yeah, his own father's
That's
sword
fucking,
crafted with his own hands.
yeah.
It's fucked up, man.
I didn't also catch it on the second time that like, because I'm like, he finds his father's sword broken. That's kind of a bummer moment, but he actually uses that fragment of the sword to cut Tulsa Doom's head off.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, which made like that moment
Okay.
was cooler than I initially credited for,
Yeah, I was sort of reading it as like,
and also had some problems with the hack, which made sense too because he's using this shattered sword to do it.
yeah, I when I saw, the sword shatter, because it's fucked up. This movie presents like this sort of MacGuffin with his father's sword, and then it goes absolutely nowhere,
Yeah.
or at least
That goes, yeah.
yeah, it gets destroyed like by Conan. He destroys that very thing.
By
but
his
I think
own hand.
thematically it fits in, right? Like he's
Right.
learning that moment there teaches him, well, the steel is not as powerful as my father said it was, because I just fucking broke it with, this rusty old shit sword that I found in the cave.
Right. Those shit swords.
But yeah, I don't know. I came away from this movie actually really, really liking it. I think it really holds together.
There's a couple funny scenes where, like, when they're all in the tent, the aforementioned, what is good in life, Conan scene. They establish that where they're like all these like men, these slave owners and pit barbarian fighter guys are sitting there, and there's like kind of like a walla crowd noise, and then it cuts out, and this one guy just says,
My fear is that my sons will never understand me.
and he kind of hangs there, and then the guy's like hastily says, Conan, what is, it's like, did this guy get a little too real with the other warlords?
I think so.
Like, whoa, Bob, we're not sharing deep emotional truths with each other. All right, Conan, tell us about, killing dudes, fucking bitches, and getting money. Like, it's so out of left field, it makes me laugh every single time I saw it.
There's a lot of weird stuff like that in this movie. For instance, like when he's learning the Eastern arts, and the guy teaches him how to swing a sword, and then he back kicks this guy in the dick for what I can tell is no reason.
Well, it's kind of like, when the bride got trained and the guy's like nagging her and trash talking her to try to get, but like, he doesn't kick Conan in the dick.
No.
He kicks the guy beside Conan in the dick.
Right. What does that teach Conan?
I have no idea what lesson was, and it'd be like if,
I don't know, but it's amazing.
in Game of Thrones, if Arya, the first sword of Bravos is teaching Arya how to use this wooden sword, and like Sean Bean comes walking in the door and he racks him.
Right.
Just so, girl, that ends your lesson for today. He's like, what? All right.
Yeah, it's fucking weird. And then I have so many questions about like what certain things are meant to be in the movie, like the Wheel of Pain. Is the Wheel of Pain just simply something that they make people do because they want to torture them?
Yeah.
Or does it serve a purpose? Like, is it grinding, flour? Is it like a mill, or is it like
it's in the middle
grinding
of a
up
desert wasteland?
The blue stew, or
I don't know, man.
what is the blue stew? Is that like orgy juice? What?
Yeah.
Is it like a Jim Jones Kool-Aid type thing? What the fuck is that stuff?
I don't know what
Why
the
does
wheel...
it have heads and hands in it? And
I had a lot of questions about the Wheel of Pain. I looked it up in the official Conan Wikipedia page because there's a whole community of everything about, because there's at least 50 Conan the Barbarian books by the guy who didn't write this main series. There's like hundreds of these things. There's tons of video games, movies, just all kinds of shit. And apparently the Wheel of Pain, like its official description is, it's a device used to keep slaves and prisoners exhausted and occupied until they're sold or used for other purposes. So like literally it's just a pointless task. And there is something kind of almost like Warhammer 40K, grim, dark, awesome about strapping a 12-year-old kid to this thing, and then he's just going to do that for 20 years until he turns into a... But I'm also like, okay, if the lesson is that he does this until someone comes up and buys him, why this day? Like, I feel like Arnold would be looking pretty fucking prime for the fighting pits like a year ago.
He's the last slave on the auction block.
He's the last kid picked for
Don't buy it.
dodgeball. I don't buy it.
No.
I don't buy it.
There have to be, 10 other better
Yeah.
Conans out there already scooped up?
Yeah.
That's shocking.
Yeah, and how did he beat them when he got to the pits fighting
Right.
circuit?
Right.
Like, it's so... I mean, occasionally happens. Like, Tom Brady famously, like, drafted in the 6th round or maybe even undrafted, and he's probably... I hate the man more than anything, and I can't argue that he's not the greatest quarterback in NFL history. Like, sometimes people fuck up and their talent scouts aren't all there. But look at the guy.
Yeah.
Look at him. He's Arnold goddamn Schwarzenegger.
Right.
Talent scouts in Samaria are fucking blind, apparently.
I will say, I think after watching this movie, I'm halfway interested in reading a book or two.
Dude, same. I got like the lore looked pretty tasty and deep. Now, I
yeah,
imagine
and
it's just
I'm not a
utterly
lore
ridiculous.
guy, but I'm thinking, man, if I'm this impressed by a cheesy adaptation of those books, then maybe I'd be really impressed by the books.
Maybe. I mean, they're very like I imagine they're very 50s kind of pulp. But yeah, fun. Like I had a good friend in high school had read them all. And he was always trying to get me into it, and I was always like, "Look, man, my mom takes one look at this cover, and you're never getting your book back. Like, it's hard enough to sneak Lord of the Rings by her. Like, this shit. Do you see this? What's on this cover?
Yeah,
he's literally conjuring a demon from a naked woman's vagina. It's not gonna fly in my house. But yeah,
right.
the covers look amazing, and it's always like." Conan the Barbarian, Conan the Destroyer, Conan the Conqueror, Conan the Pirate, Conan the Ninja. Like, how the fuck? This guy must, like, just fight around the world.
Yeah, people are talking about how they really want Arnold Schwarzenegger to come back and do King Conan.
Dude, this is what I want to talk about.
Okay.
The last image of this film is begging for old man Schwarzenegger to come out and do King Conan. Like he should have done it 10 years ago. He's 71 years old. His heart could explode at any moment from from just maintaining his bulk for the last 55 years. He's got to. There's no way this man dies and like it's like Clint Eastwood not making Unforgiven when he finally got old enough to do it.
Right.
Like this is what you're supposed to do. You close out a trilogy. I mean, I can't believe it's not happening. Maybe it's because, honestly, I think Arnold became his own worst enemy. That when he was commanding $20 million just to show up, no thing could get off the ground because he was like this giant boat anchor. And I don't know if he's flexed on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he was either going to make huge budget things or not make anything.
I mean, he's super wealthy because he's not just like movie star wealthy. He invested in a lot of smart real estate in California.
Yeah,
like he's got to be. And he married a Kennedy. He's like super fucking wealthy. So he doesn't have to do anything. Like why? But why wouldn't he want to? This is the guy that has Conan's sword hung in his governor's fucking office when he was serving as governor of California. How can he not make King Conan? He kind of lived that life.
Yeah, book into your career, man. Do one last big movie that everybody wants you to do and call it good. Retire to your castle.
Plus he's got so much life experience and like more acting skill. Like the improvements, I mean, Arnold was never like on the level of Sly Stallone when it comes to acting, and just that's something we kind of talked about in the prelude of this podcast. Like, I mean, maybe people could point me wrong. Like, Arnold's got some excellent movies: Predator, Terminator 2, True Lies. There's a lot, but he doesn't have like a Rocky. He doesn't have a First Blood. He doesn't have a Copland. Like, this is a legitimately good performance that could conceivably win an Academy Award, right? And I think if he did King Conan with the right people, you got the right director, the right writer, you go for broke on the costuming and the set design, and I think it'd be amazing.
And I would love to see what John Williams could do with the soundtrack.
Yeah,
because you have to get him for it, right?
I mean, there's not much time left to make any of these things,
and for either of these guys.
Like it's doubtful that 5 years from now this is even possible because of the ravages of death. I don't know.
Yeah, I hope it happens.
I hope they bury Arnold in his coffin in a shroud covered in resurrection tattoos.
All right, yeah.
That would be that would be badass. Yeah, with his sword. That would be so. I mean, no self-respecting human would actually do that. Like, that's some Bela Lugosi sad, dying old and addicted to heroin shit.
Tell that to Nick Cage, man.
Yeah,
he's already got his plot picked out.
Right, he's gonna be buried in like Christopher Reeve's Superman suit.
Right. with the test shoot mullet that they gave him.
And he also has in his will that he wants them before they bury him to try to shoot him full of that resurrection juice from Serpent and the Rainbow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just see, guys.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. What's the worst that can happen?
I'm a nouveau shaman. This stuff might work on me. Do you have any final thoughts on Conan?
I don't think so. I actually really like this movie now.
Yeah.
After having, I will say, finally sat down and actually watched the movie.
All right, so that's one of our films in the Super Serious Film Fest fantasy. Please check out all the others that we're posting during the run of Game of Thrones. Also, if you are a club member, every one of these has a companion piece called a live watch that you can view on our website, baldmove.com, where we actually watch this movie. And it's kind of like a Riff Tracks Mystery Science Theater. We have a little fun with it.
Man, this one is worth it for the buzzard bite scene.
The
alone.
buzzard bite. Jim was not prepared for the buzzard bite.
I
knew it
I
was
knew
coming.
the camel punch was coming. I
Yeah.
had forgotten about the buzzard bite.
Genuine delight and shock from Jim Jones.
Holy shit.
And if you're not a club member, it's easy to join. You not only do you get access to the live watches and lunches with Jim and Aaron, but right here during Game of Thrones, we're also doing instant talk, where immediately after we get done watching the first showing of Game of Thrones, we take to the internet and we do a live podcast on it, but we also invite some of our audience consisting of club members. And the only way to get in on that audience participation of the Instant Talk podcast is to be a club member at club.baldmove.com. Until the next time, until the next episode of Game of Thrones or the next installment of Super Serious Film Fest, I am your host, Aaron.
And I'm Jim.
See ya.